Hello and welcome to the RPG Blender, a week of lesser played games and forgotten settings that roll the dice they deserve. I'm your host, Game Master George, and I'm certain that you have heard plenty about the ongoing OGL crisis with regards to Dungeons & Dragons. Now, Dungeons & Dragons itself is not usually within the purview of this channel, however, I have been forced to talk about it more recently than I would like to, but this does bring up an opportunity for non-Dungeons & Dragons gaming. So today, I want to take a quick, brief little look at a few games that offer open licenses which are not based on the OGL. Now, I want to start this off by saying that I am not a lawyer. I know nothing about this stuff. All I can really do is react to what people are saying online and say, yeah, that makes sense. So I am not giving any kind of real legal advice here. I am not going to comment on what these changes to the OGL actually mean for the gaming community. Instead, I just want to focus on a few games that offer that different OGL. And I think it is particularly interesting that some games are actually changing their license, apparently in response to this. For example, as of November 22nd, 2022, the Year Zero engine had been licensed under the Open Gaming License. However, you will notice that I am viewing this in the Wayback Machine. That's because if you were to go to this website today, you will see that the Open Gaming License for the Year Zero engine is being reviewed and is not currently available. Hopefully, it will be coming back in a more robust form that cuts any possible connection with Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro shenanigans. But that's not what we're here for. We're here to take a look at a few games that currently offer open licenses of some kind to be able to create new material based on their game. Now, this is primarily of importance to creators, the people who are actually going out and writing those third-party supplements. But if you are just someone who plays games, then what this can serve as is a way for you to possibly find an alternative game that you could get into and still be able to support those smaller creators without having to support Wizards of the Coast. If you, the players, can build a larger base for these other games with these better licenses, then you can take away that monopoly that Dungeons & Dragons has. So consider supporting one of these 5 games and the creators that are using the licenses for these games. We won't be going too in detail for any of these games, let's just say that right off the bat. We don't have enough time for that. But I will try to give some little highlights here and there about the games. And with that, let's get started. First up, let's talk about Fate. Fate is a fairly well-known game, I'd say. You may not have played it, but you have almost certainly heard of it. Fate has had an open gaming license for quite a long time, actually. Unfortunately, it was originally based off of the Wizards of the Coast OGL, but they now have their entire SRD available through a Creative Commons attribution license. This means that you are free to share, distribute the material, adapt it however you like, with the condition that you must attribute the source. You must give appropriate credit. I don't think anybody's going to object to that. Anyway, if you go to faterpg.com/licensing, you can take a look at the actual Fate license, and you'll see that it offers you still the OGL or Creative Commons option. You should definitely go for the Creative Commons option. Here you will also find the full SRD, all of the information that you have available to work with. One thing that you'll note on a lot of SRDs, which you may be familiar with as well, most of the setting details are stripped out. Those are the bits of intellectual property that they are holding on to themselves. Makes sense, they need something for themselves. What you instead get are all of the rules, all of the systems in place that helps them build their game, which you can then use to build your own adaptation. Now, is Fate a good system for you? If you're familiar with Dungeons & Dragons, then you know what a roll and add system is. You roll a die and you add some kind of modifier. Fate is a roll and add system, but with a twist. You are still rolling dice and then adding a modifier from a skill. However, instead of rolling a d20 and getting a number, you are rolling 4 special dice. These d6s have 3 different values on it: a plus, a 0, and a minus. Every plus that you roll adds 1 to your skill for that roll. Every minus subtracts 1, and a 0 does nothing. The final result of those 4 dice will be between a -4 and a +4, giving you a more reliable window of your capabilities. Get your final total, compare it to your opposition, and you know if you've succeeded or not. Simple to use, and a bit of a fun twist on a standard roll and add system. While there are indeed, the skills which give you numeric advantages, one of the more important things with your character are your aspects. These aspects are effectively role-playing guides for your character written into your character sheet. And yes, these can guide the way that you're playing the character, but most importantly, they can guide you into taking negative action for your character. This is called a compel. When you give into this compel, in other words, giving into your character's flaws to the detriment of their progress, you get tokens, and these tokens can be extremely important, allowing you to activate powerful effects and bonuses when you might need them later. So giving into your darker impulses now can give you the strength that you're going to need to eventually rise up and fight against whatever that overwhelming force might be. Anyway, those are the basics of Fate, and if you're looking to keep with that roll and add system, but add a little bit more impact to your character backstory on your play, this could be a good system for you. It leads to a very free system that can easily support many different genres. Now, one of the other downsides of this move by Hasbro is that other companies who have done nothing wrong are having their licenses be looked at with a bit of a shady eye. Considering that, if Hasbro's doing this, how long until these other companies do as well? And someone who has voiced that problem is Monty Cook from the aptly named Monty Cook Games. I have been a fan of many Monty Cook products, in particular the game that we're going to be talking about here. And it is great to see him coming out in full support of maintaining that open license. We're paying attention to what's going on. If there need to be changes to make our open license be as safe to use, we'll make them. If you consider those words to be more than just a PR statement, then consider the Cypher System open license. This is not based on the OGL, nor is it a true Creative Commons license. Instead, they have created their own open license, which is what kind of causes that concern that some people have had that maybe Cypher System will have a similar change in 20 years. There's no saying that that won't happen, but it certainly seems that as long as Monty Cook is in charge of Monty Cook Games, probably not going to happen. It has the usual stuff. You can't use their settings, you can't say that they made it or that they endorsed it, that they supported it, whatever. All you can say is that it is compatible with the Cypher System. And then you have the full SRD. Word document. Monty Cook Games, please make this a PDF or a website or something, because Word documents suck to go through. Anyway, this is another rolling system against a target number. However, where this differs is that rather than your abilities adding to your roll, they lower the difficulty. This is similar in concept. It could be considered a roll and subtract system instead of a roll and add system, but the difference is the scale. With each challenge, you will have a difficulty assigned from 1 to 10. The target number then becomes 3 times that difficulty. When you have appropriate skills that will assist you in the roll, they lower the difficulty, not the target number. So in this example here, character skills, favorable circumstances, or excellent equipment can decrease the difficulty of a task. For example, if a character is trained in climbing, they turn a difficulty 6 climb into a difficulty 5 climb. They've reduced the difficulty, not the target number. The difficulty lowering by 1 then results in the target number reducing by 3 instead of 1. You then drop a simple d20 and compare it to whatever the final target number is to determine your success. Now, of course, that is not all there is to this system. One of my favorite things about it is the method of character creation. You're not choosing an ancestry and a class. You become an adjective, noun, who verbs. Each one of those 3 elements gives you modifications, gives you statistics and abilities, lets you customize your character into something that is unique for you. So you could be a charming con artist who creates portals. And you can see how this format then allows for a very open-ended system for creators to mold into their setting of choice. Now, the other major portion of the system is the intense use of ciphers. These are single-use abilities. Your consumables from an RPG. They could be items, they could be one-time spells, it could be a program that you release into the atmosphere and hacks the weather stations in order to change it to rain. It could be anything that fits within your setting. And you're able to make these fairly powerful because they are single-use, and your players are encouraged to keep using them. You see, each player can only carry so many of these ciphers at one time, which means that you won't be able to fall into the "what if I need it later" trap that I fall into with every single game ever. Because if you find that fourth cipher and you can only hold 3, one of them's getting the boot. So game masters are encouraged to be fairly free with giving them out, and the one-time use nature allows for the creators to be able to make some very powerful or unique effects without unbalancing their entire game. If you can't tell, I am a big fan of the Cypher system. It pretty much tops my list of systems that I've never actually gotten a chance to play. One day, Predation, one day my players will be riding dinosaurs. All right, now let's say that you're looking to create a solo experience. Well, did you know that Ironsworn has an open license? That's right, for both Ironsworn and Ironsworn Starforge, they have a Creative Commons attribution license available for their SRD. Once again, you must include attribution. You cannot use their setting, their images, their icons, any of that other stuff, and you can't say that yours is an official Ironsworn project, the standard stuff. But within this, you have a very robust solo RPG experience. And I say solo, but it can be used for small groups as well. I do think that it is best as a solo game due to the bookkeeping involved. But is Ironsworn a good solo game for you to base your game off of? Well, Ironsworn is, well, fairly punishingly difficult. And a large portion of that is actually due to people punishing themselves more than might be necessary. You see, this is a solo game, so when you fail at rolls, it is up to you most of the time to determine what kind of price you're going to pay. And people tend to be a little harsh on themselves, it seems. Anyway, Ironsworn is a target number-based system. So what you're doing when you're making a roll is rolling 3 dice, 2 d10s and 1 d6. The d10s are your challenge dice. The d6 is your action dice. So these d10s set the target number for your roll, while the d6 becomes your actual result. To this d6, you will add your statistic and any additional modifiers that you might have. You then compare that value to the 2 results rolled on the d10. If it exceeds both of the d10s, you get a strong hit. If it exceeds only one of them, you get a weak hit. And if it is lower than both of them, you have a failure. Now, as you're playing through the game, you will be taking moves, and each move will define what the results of a strong hit, weak hit, or failure are. As an example, when taking the Gather Information move, if you get a strong hit, you discover something helpful and specific. Envision what you learn and take 2 momentum. That momentum then helps you on your future roll. On a weak hit, the information complicates your quest or introduces new danger. So you still get that forward momentum, but in an unfortunate direction. And then on a miss, your investigation unearths a dire threat or reveals an unwelcome truth that undermines your quest, and you must
pay the price.
When you miss on a move, you'll usually see a prompt to pay the price. When you pay the price, you might have a person or community you trusted lose faith in you. An action has an unintended effect. The current situation worsens. So you'll see that these give you then difficulty, which in the case of Gather Information helps to point toward what that new danger might be. Now, one of the other core elements of Ironsworn are the Iron Vows. This is the idea that your character is driven by vows that they have made. You are not somebody who's being driven by the whims of the day. You have a purpose that you have chosen for yourself, that you believed in strong enough that you picked up a piece of iron and swore to it that you would accomplish this task. In your game, it might not be iron itself that you are swearing to. It could be whatever is important ritualistically to your setting. But the idea is the same. The player characters here are not aimless drifters. They are guided missiles. And this is something that is very helpful in a solo game, which can sometimes lack some direction. After all, you do not want to forsake your vow. All right, now let's say that you want to get a little bit away from that driven goal that you had with Ironsworn. Well, then you might consider a Forged in the Dark game. Forged in the Dark is the open license for the Blades in the Dark system. Once again, this is a Creative Commons attribution license, so what you'll see here should be very familiar by now. You're free to use the text of their rules. You can't say that it's made by them or supported by them, and you have to give them credit for their work. As always, read the details yourself. I'm not a lawyer. not legal advice, but this game is very player focused. In this, you play as characters in some kind of crew, working together in some mutual and jointly created goal. In the standard Blades in the Dark, this is most often thought of as the heist game, and it does those very well because the systems are built to maximize action and minimize planning. It utilizes a flashback system where your players are encouraged to jump into the action and then retroactively prepare for whatever hurdle they're about to encounter. So when they run into the guards at the door, they can flash back to the time when they got the tranquilizer darts that they're about to use to knock them out. The base mechanics are also weighted toward players succeeding in what they're going to do. The way the system works is by building a pool of d6s based on one of your character's traits determined by the action you're taking. You then roll these d6s and find the highest number rolled. If this number is a 1 through a 3, you fail. A 4 or a 5 is a partial success, and a 6 is a total success. As you can see, with even one die, you still have a 50% chance of success. And when you could be rolling up to 6 dice with one roll, you have a pretty good chance of succeeding at any action you take, albeit with some potential complications with those partial successes. This leads to a very forward-driven game. Your players are constantly doing things, and doing them correctly, or at least mostly correctly. Correctly enough that you, the game master, then get to focus on twisting those partial successes into the interesting outcomes. And that builds into the idea of clocks. Clocks are one of my favorite mechanics that I've seen in any game, and it's something that I use for basically everything that I run now. When you have a threat or a long action that's happening, you set up a clock with 4, 6, 8, however many segments you want, really. Those are just the standard numbers. And then as things happen, as players succeed or fail in rolls, as time passes, you fill in segments of that clock. And then when the clock is full, whatever that was ticking toward occurs. By keeping the clocks visible to your players, you can build a suspense, build a dread as they see it ticking towards some unknown or perhaps partially known event. It is one of the most successful ways that I have experienced to drive action forward. One of the Forged in the Dark games that you can take a look at to see just how flexible this system is Wicked Ones. We took a brief look at it here during their Kickstarter campaign, and I look forward to receiving my copies of that and the Undead Awakening expansion so that I can do a full tutorial of what became one of my most favorite reads of 2022. So if you're looking for player-driven action-first gameplay, consider looking into the Forged in the Dark games and license. Now, the last game that I would like to take a look at here is one that solves an inherent problem in most tabletop RPGs, and that being investigations suck. Yeah, okay, if you have a character who is built out as an investigator, they're going to be able to breeze past it, getting all the clues and your mystery and solving it quick while everybody twiddles their thumbs. But then for the rest of the game, when there's not an investigation going on, when they're doing social interactions or combat, that person who focused heavily enough into investigation to guarantee success is going to be sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Why did I say that? I hate that phrase. That sounds so bad. Anyway, if you are looking to create an investigation game and are looking for a system to use, you should absolutely consider the Gumshoe system. Gumshoe is available as of 2013 through a Creative Commons attribution license. Gumshoe solves the investigation problem by making investigation not be tied to a dice roll. Every character is an investigator with different areas of expertise, and as the game master crafts their mystery, they will put in clues that are tied to those expertises. When the players come upon that scene, all they need to do is try to use that expertise to investigate, and they will automatically get those clues. There is no rolling involved. All it takes is a little bit of actual investigative skill from the players. And it's not a lot that's required. It's, oh, there's a car that's involved in this. I have automobile knowledge. Can I use that to see if there's anything strange with the car? Yes, you can, and here's the information you get. Where it becomes more complex, because that's fairly simplistic, is that you also get points in these expertises. These points can then be spent to gain additional clues, more detailed information. So simply having the expertises and using them in the right places will guarantee you enough information to solve the mystery. But by spending points instead, you can get further detailed information which will help you reach the right conclusion. By taking the dice out of the investigation, you've removed the problem of, well, I rolled a 1, so I guess we don't solve the mystery, which has happened all too many times. When you involve random chance in the mystery solving, you either end up with a walk in the park for every mystery, or just a dead stop. Instead here, it becomes more based on player ingenuity in how they're going to try to use their expertises to investigate what's going on. But of course, there is other stuff to the system. There are also non-investigative actions, and for that you have a more standard TN system. This is a roll and spend system. See, like you have points that you can spend for your investigations, you also have points that you can spend on your skills. Each non-investigation skill has its own pool of points, and when you make a roll against that skill, you can spend points in order to raise that roll. And since players do not know the difficulty of the test before they spend, they need to be committing to an action without knowing how easy or hard it will be for them to accomplish it. This roll and spend system allows your players very much control over what they do and do not feel like they need to accomplish. When they think that there is a task that is absolutely vital to their success, they're going to be spending points on it. Except for the first time that you play this. The first time you play this, your players will either spend nothing or will spend their entire load at the get-go. But eventually they'll learn moderation. Maybe. So if you're looking to create an investigative game, I don't think you're going to find a better game with an open license than Gumshoe. And there we have it. 5 games that I think are worthy alternatives to move away from Dungeons & Dragons and their OGL shenanigans. Before we go, I do want to say thank you to everybody who has come out and viewed the channel in the past few weeks. This isn't exactly the first video I was planning to make, but with everything that was going on, I figured it would be a nice little easy step back into the content creation after the fairly extended break. Stay tuned, there's more coming, including a fairly substantial unboxing of some Kickstarter projects that have come in. That's taking a little longer than I expected. But anyway, there's a lot more coming. Stay tuned, thank you for everybody who's come out and watched, and remember, there's gaming outside the Forgotten Realms.